First of all, the real concern for veterans begins with the Civil War, I think. I think the size of the Civil War, the amount of loss and suffering that was incurred in the Civil War, and the amount of sacrifice that so many families felt, the kind of thing that Drew Gilpin-Faust talks about in her book, really made people understand for the first time, even as the war was going on, that people needed to be taken care of, and we had to take more responsibility towards the people that had served the country. The Civil War veterans are the source of Memorial Day. They are also important just because they, even though it's 150 years, they're still, this is the war that has shaped America more than almost any other single war except possibly World War II. So it's well worth remembering.
Did Quincy send many young men off to war?
There were about, I think, 750 men from Quincy who went off to the Army, the Navy, one of these services. And given that the population of this town was probably about 5,000, that's a proportionally pretty high number. And if you look at losses proportionally, the number of men who died as a result of the war from Quincy was proportionally much higher than in any other conflict. And you count people who are, if you look at people who have endured some kind of suffering in the war, a wound or imprisonment, it becomes very, very high indeed. It comes up to close to 1/3.
Was the anti-slavery or abolitionist movement, were either of those very strong here?
A very complicated issue. Certainly, the Adams family, Charles Francis Adams, John Quincy Adams before him, even though he died well before the war, were strongly opposed to slavery, thought it was really a moral evil. By and large, the founding generation thought of slavery as an evil, even if they felt that they had at the time to accept it as a temporary expedient. Edmund Quincy, who did not live here, but is sort of a member of the Quincy family, was an outspoken abolitionist. Among rank-and-file Quincy people, I think it's harder to tell. I mean, I think you had a diversity of opinion, as you would on many topics. And I think what did happen is as the war progressed, and just as, in a way, President Lincoln himself moved more and more to understand that this really had to be a war about slavery, and that slavery really had to be ending slavery really had to be the goal of the war. I think the Quincy community came along with him, so that by 1864, 1865, I think they had come to understand that this was really the purpose of the war, and they were behind it.